Welcome back to Dad Jokes. I'm Jerry, joined here by Brandon, and this is the podcast where new time dads kind of go through our experiences as we're living them. So, Brandon, this is a big episode, huge episode, because no longer are
Absolutely.
you waiting, you are a dad. I'm going to let you get that big reveal of the baby and the name and kind of that whole experience here in a second. But before we do that, let me start with a dad joke. I know you cannot wait to hear this one because, as per usual, my jokes are a little bit better than yours, I think. So we're going to start with
We'll
that.
see
So,
about this week.
so Brandon, what's brown and sticky?
My baby's poop when it first came out.
No, I was looking for a stick. Brown and sticky.
Rolling my
Yep,
eyes.
yep. That was maybe the most dad joke we've had thus far. So I thought it was appropriate with the big news we have here today. But Brandon, without further ado, you take it away. Kind of introduce us to your new loved one.
So on August 30th of this year, my wife and I were very happy to have a new member of our family. My son, Bryce Brandon Banks, was born. It was a long and short process, which I'll get into in just a little bit. I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday that my wife was waking me up and letting me know with tears in her eyes that she was expecting. We were pregnant. We were both super excited. And then you snap your fingers, do the Thanos snap, and I got a baby keeping me up at night a little bit, which you might hear in my voice right now. Um, but I couldn't be happier with um, kind of the process, and we got a perfect baby boy.
So what was that day of experience like though? I know it didn't go quite according to plan. Obviously most importantly the baby's completely healthy, which is fantastic. But kind of what was that experience like?
So it was it was grueling, and I can't imagine like what it was like for my wife. We've had these conversations, but it was mentally exhausting for me personally. Just to give a little background, we knew that she was going to be induced. So a week ago, basically, so on a Sunday, about a week before he was born, we went in. We spent a couple of days in the hospital to go through the induction process. Which, without getting into it, you can listen to our last episode. I gave a little bit more in-depth detail there. Um, Spent a couple of days. They did some things that started the contractions, but it wasn't to the point that the doctor felt comfortable proceeding, because he felt that we would have to have an emergency C-section if they did something and it didn't work. So the decision was made to go home, let the body reset, and potentially the next time that she came in, her body would be more receptive to the medicine that they gave her. So that's what we did. And you asked about day of. So we had the induction schedule for Sunday, 7:30. We get to the hospital and we start the same process again. So it was they gave her Cytotec, which softens the cervix, and noticed at that time that the baby had the cervix was still the same. She wasn't any more dilated. So we were kind of prepping ourselves for that's when stuff we'd already spent a week with a little frustration, and that's when it started to set in a little bit more for both of us. They gave her a couple rounds of Cytotec. Her doctor came in the morning and basically kicked it to us straight. He's like, "Hey, we can keep trying this." He's like, "I was hoping that it would take a little bit more, and we had prepped ourselves for this." Um, but he's like, we can go the next route, because I know you guys want to have a vaginal birth, but I really don't think that this is going to change anything. And part of the reason we chose this doctor is we had talked to him beforehand. He knew our plan. He knew that we wanted to go that route, and he was going to exhaust every resource to do that. But after overall 3.5 days in the hospital trying it, we didn't want to risk or put ourselves in a position where she had to have an emergency C-section, which operates a little bit different than one is planned. So we made a decision with the doctor on his advice to have a C-section, and they were able to schedule it for that day at 2:30. So with that, we were scheduled at 2:30 for the C-section, and So for the basically the rest of the time, they unhooked her from the IV. They let her rest a little bit, but the problem is she couldn't eat. You're not supposed to eat for basically 6 hours before the C-section. And we had no plan on having a C-section that day. So she didn't have like a big breakfast or anything like that. They basically came in at like 7 o'clock in the morning, woke her up out of her sleep, had the conversation with her and told her this is what's about to happen.
So where
So
was her mind at with that? You know, like obviously I kind of know where you were at a little bit, but do you know kind of where she was at when they came in and told her that basically her plan was going to have to be altered in such a huge way?
frustration. But what we kept going back to is we didn't just like pick our doctor's name out of a hat. He came highly recommended. He has a very good reputation, and you get to a point where you may have a plan, but you have to trust the people who are in that position that they're in. And if we put him in a position to help us make that decision, and he wasn't saying, "Hey, you absolutely have to do this. I'm not doing it a different way." He made his recommendation. And we knew for a fact that he tried to. He sent us home. We could have done this all a week ago, but he was trying to help us do it our way. We didn't want to put her or the baby in a position where things had to happen more quickly than they needed to and get rushed. So um, it was frustrating, especially for her. When they came in and checked and we knew it was in the same spot, we had a feeling that was what was going to happen. So we prepped ourselves a little bit for it, but there's still nothing that kind of preps you for that. So ultimately, that she was frustrated, but knew that's what had to be done. And from that point on, like there were some tears the night before, once she knew that that's probably the route when her and I talked. But I mean, she had her game face on from that moment forward. I didn't see anything else. It was like, okay, let's do it. What surprised me was you basically at 8 7 8 o'clock in the morning, you got this time period. So I'm like I'm starting to get stuff ready. What surprised me is how quickly everything went from that point. Like you're used to, if you're watching like a TV show or a movie, like people are walking around the hospital waiting for a baby to come. Things are a lot of times happening, and you prepare yourself for this drawn out process. So I'll just kind of walk us through it. So 9:30. I think this is good for people who might end up having to go through it because it flustered me a little bit. So we knew in the morning we're scheduled. About 2 o'clock comes around, the nurse comes in the room, lets us know, hey, it's not gonna be 2:30, it's gonna be 3:30. Okay, that sucks. She could have ate something,
Right.
um, and that was a big thing. She was hungry, so I'm waiting. I'm thinking at 3:30, and I had asked. They said they're gonna take you the way we're staged. We're staged in almost like a holding room. Um, that which where we had been was a small room with a bed and a pull-out couch, and then at the hospital we're in, they have a birthing room for
Hmm.
traditional births.
Yep.
And then after that, you go to a room that's right next to the nursery at the hospital that you're in for the remainder of your stay. So in my head, and I should have asked more questions, we were going to the birthing room to get this done because we'd always prepped to the birthing room at this hospital is where everything is done. So you're there from the birth and you stay there after until you move to the holding room. That's not what happened. So we it's going to be 3:30 now. At 3 o'clock, the anesthesiologist comes in. It's a resident and a main anesthesiologist, and they were great. They walk Kelsey through the process. They tell her, "Hey, this is what's going to happen. You should feel these things. We're going to set you up so you basically don't feel anything." But she had to get um, a what's called a spinal block. It's similar to an epidural, but not quite the same thing. Um, so they're walking us through this, and I'm in my head, I'm going to be a part of this process the entire time. So 3 o'clock walks around. It's a little foreshadowing. 3 o'clock comes around. The anesthesiologists are in there for maybe 10 minutes, and they leave, and they said we'll be right back, and they literally are right back. Nurse and anesthesiologist come back within 2 minutes. The nurse hands me a gown to put over all my clothes, so it has
Hmm.
a hat, socks, the full get up, and from there, they're like ready to go. So I'm thinking I have to until 3:30. I'd already started moving all of our stuff over, but I'd already been told we're not coming back to this room. So and a lot of stuff probably doesn't matter to people, but I want to give you kind of my state of mind. So I'm worried about, hey, where's our stuff gonna go? We got laptops, we got iPads, we got
Right, right,
a bunch of our clothes, the baby stuff. It's like we're leaving this room. They don't lock. Now they lock the wing down, but I'm asking, hey, how do we get our shoes? Like, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. So I move all our stuff to a corner, and they end up um, they end up taking that for us. So I didn't realize that until after we left the room. So I get my get up on, and they're like wheeling her out. Like, so the operation starts at 3:30. The way that works, she needed to be in the room at 3:30. I'm thinking that we're leaving at 3:30 to go
right,
there.
right,
So what they do is we walk together down the hallway. We get to like the doors of the operating room, these big menacing doors that they got to buzz you in and walk her through. And they say, okay, Mr. Banks, you follow me. We're going to get her situated, and then we're going to bring you into the room. So now my heart kind of drops a little bit. I'm like, I want to be there, but I can't. So they sit you in a chair in the middle of a hallway where there's nothing next to you but a cart where the doctors are coming in, grabbing their gloves and going into the operating room. So I'm by myself. They tell me it's gonna be 10 minutes. We're gonna come grab you, and you're gonna have a baby. Cool. 27 minutes later, they come and grab me. So that was the longest additional like 17 minutes of my life because is stuff going on? What wrong? Like, what's going on? So they finally come and grab me. We walk into the operating room, and they basically started. So my wife is laying on the table. They have the screen up, and there's two doctors to either side of her like stomach region,
right.
and they're the two anesthesiologists behind her, and there are about three nurses in the room. And her doctor wanted to have a NICU nurse on like in the room just in case anything went wrong. So appreciated that. So, but when I get there, she's like on the table, backed up, and I see doctor's hands moving. Like it's not like we have time to. So I'm walking in the middle of the fight. Basically, is how I'm looking
Right.
at it. They tell me, "Hey, have a seat here," and you get like basically you can hold her hand. So I grab the seat. The chair is like way too long away from me or far away from me for me to really grab her hand. So I don't even ask. I just scoot up right next to her. I'm holding her hand. I'm looking at her, and you just like putting yourself in the scene. It's like you see everywhere. You hear the beat, beat, beat. You got the baby heartbeat going in the background, and it's go time. And so a couple things. I'm not gonna walk us through the entire process, but some things that really kind of almost got to me. That was without question it was quick. I mean, we were in the operating room. I was in the operating room for probably 10, 15 minutes. And not even that. It was 5 to 10 minutes. Um, and they're hit a point. So my wife does pretty well with pain, but I can kind of see like with the anesthesia, she's kind of almost going in and out of it, and you're like just staring at there's nothing you can do. Like it's the most helpless feeling. And as a dad, and this is kind of why we are here to talk about stuff like this. You the most helpless feeling is when you see somebody you love and you got your baby coming out and you literally can't do anything. You're waiting. And so we're sitting, I'm sitting in that seat, and the doctor, who's calm, cool, collected, funny guy, he yells at like the resident nurse anesthetist, or not nurse, but anesthesiologist, and says, "Hey, guy, I'm going word for word. Hey, guy, put your hands here really quick. Give me a lot of pressure right now." So now I don't know what's going on.
Right.
I'm like internally, and I'm trying not to do this because my wife is like in and out of it, but like she's she's still like looking at me,
Right.
and they're just the guy puts the pressure there, and I see the hands of our doctor and then the other doctor, and her torso is kind of just moving side to side on the table. It seems like they're pulling like a lot, and so he does that. He tells them okay, and then like 4 seconds later, I hear the word hemorrhaging,
Oh god.
and I'm like what? And my wife like looks at me like she recognized it, kind of looks at me, but she's spaced out. Uh, and it wasn't hemorrhage wasn't it. It was something like that. I'm sorry. Um, it freaked us out, and so for the next 15 seconds, there's like no words at all, and then I hear her doctor make a joke, which he always is like playing around, making a joke, and then he's like, "You want to see your baby?" And at this point, I don't hear a cry or anything.
Right.
I went from hey guy, put pressure here to hemorrhaging to um, a joke in 15 seconds. And for that
Jeez.
15 seconds, I literally thought like my wife's about to die. I'm not about to have a baby. Like every thought that could happen is going through my head. So he holds the baby up. We still don't hear it crying. Uh, I see it long enough to see a little winky floating around in the standing up, and then they wheel him into the back. And so now it goes from fear for my wife to fear for my child because I hadn't completely heard the cry. I heard a couple noises, and then 4 seconds later in the back, I just hear like a wail. That was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard in my entire
Oh,
life. So
that's
that
awesome,
was
man.
yeah.
Such highs
Uh,
and lows mixed, so close together. That's just crazy. Did they let you cut the cord?
so no.
Oh.
So I'm not sure what happens traditionally in the C-section. I didn't even ask that. That part went right over my head. I didn't realize that until after we got back to the room. So from the point that we had him, there's another room connected to the operating room. That's same room and just like you round a quick corner. He was back there for maybe 45 seconds, and then the nurse comes out and says, "Hey, you want to come see him?" So I look at my wife. She's like, "Go, like, go check on the baby. Is everything okay?" And keep in mind, she's completely drugged up and spaced out and all this. So her saying that in my head is also equivalent to her like nodding and going,
Right.
basically. So I walked to the room, and it was actually funny. So I see my kid there. He's got kind of glue and gump all over him, and I'm walking in on a conversation with the nurses, and one of them is like, "Hey, did you? Everything's checking out, but I didn't check the anus. Did you check and make sure he has an anus?" And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, she was like, "Yes, he has an anus." I'm laughing to myself. I'm like, it's like, what happens if he didn't have an anus? She's like, "You don't want to know. We don't want to have those conversations." So that was
Oh.
the first time I met my kid, and I'm thankful that he has an anus. Um,
Uh,
but the cord, I was not able to cut the cord. Um, I'm sure that has something to do with whatever was going on in there. And according to the doctor, um, when he got in there, the walls of her uterus were so small, or the lining, however you phrase it. Once he was there, he had no doubt about his decision um, to go with the C-section. He's like, we could have tried this for another 20 hours. Everything in your body was doing what it was supposed to do, except one particular area that the baby wouldn't get past it. So we would have ended up at this same point, and it could have been harmful to the baby to keep doing what we were doing. So that made us feel good. But long story short, for that particular part of the process, um, like the baby was happy, healthy. Mom's doing really well right now. There, she's a little sore, but I'm saying a little sore. Like I didn't have to go through it, but this is coming from her, not me. It was a great experience overall, but also one of the most frightening, like 30 seconds to a minute I've ever had in my entire life.
well, I can only imagine, and obviously, I'll be going through something similar or some kind of process here in a few months. But I mean, obviously, I've seen pictures and seen you guys, and it's a beautiful baby boy, and like you said, healthy, and mom's healthy, and you're doing good. So I mean, that's the ultimate results you want, and I
Yep.
guess the big thing through a lot of videos I've watched, a lot of research I've done, books I've read, talking to people, is there's different processes, and you can have a plan in place, um, which is good. But at the end of the day, the goal is a happy, healthy baby. And no matter what process you take to get there, if that's the end result, you got to take it as a win. I was just reading something yesterday that was talking about birthing plans, and it was saying, hey, have a birthing plan, go over it with your wife, talk to your doctor and stuff about it, but write it on a note and put it in your pocket and never give it to anyone. Because if you give it to someone, then you're trying to stick to it and things happen, things change, and then you get freaked out or stressed out about sticking to a plan that sometimes you can't plan for. So that was his advice, and again, I haven't gone through it myself, but maybe you're a testament to why he said that.
Well, to that point, so obviously we had a plan on a vaginal birth. That didn't happen. And things worked out very well in how they should have for us in that moment. The other thing we had plans for, so they wheel us out of the room, they put us in the holding room or the birthing room actually, to make sure everything's great. They check out mom, check out the baby. We're there for a few hours, and then the next couple of days we're in basically the recovery room, which is actually a huge room. Shout out to the hospital we were at. Um, and also while I'm at it, the nurses there. What's crazy is I know your wife's a nurse. I mean, they were absolutely great. Um, like the things that I didn't even realize nurses do, and how much they help just overall. Couldn't give them all a raise. Couldn't speak more highly of them. Um,
Yes, please do give them all a raise, especially at that hospital, because that hospital is the one she works at, as you know. So give
absolutely.
them all, give them all a raise.
So the other thing we have a plan for, and absolutely we're kind of adamant about, was breastfeeding and is breastfeeding. And to each their own. Everybody has a different plan, but that's what our plan is and was. My son was born with a pretty significant tongue tie. You can't tell until he like literally got to pull his lip down, which might be hereditary because I had one when I was born as well. But that causes an issue with the babies latching and also being able to continue to get like the milk supply they need. So from the very beginning, what's crazy is he didn't have a huge issue latching, but wasn't able to get everything he needed from the breast. And we were open to supplementing with formula because at the end of the day, baby needs to eat. And what we were told was by multiple doctors and nurses, we're really happy that you guys are willing to adjust because I can't tell you how many times babies leave here underweight because
Correct.
they can't latch, and it's not for those who don't know, the mom's milk doesn't come in immediately. The baby's getting what's called colostrum
Hmm.
from the breast, which has a ton of nutrients and everything. But the main point of them kind of suckling is it stimulates what the woman's body needs to produce the milk, and most people's milk comes in about 3 days. So do they need that colostrum? Absolutely, but um, it wasn't working for him. So luckily, our baby actually left the hospital. He had gained. He only lost just a little bit of weight, and we just found out at the first doctor's appointment he gained some weight. But be willing to adjust. Everybody's plan is their plan, obviously, but life doesn't always happen the way you want. You got to do what's best for the baby.
Absolutely. With obviously my wife being a pediatric nurse, she tells me stories all the time, and we want to obviously breastfeed too, but she tells me that there's so many moms that just drive themselves insane because
Yeah,
they don't want to supplement, or they if the baby isn't cooperating or something's not cooperating with their body, and they just freak out, and then now the baby's being harmed because it's not eating
correct.
for long periods of time, not getting anything. So she tells me all the time, there's just lots of women that stress themselves out so much from that, and it can be just traumatizing. So, I've heard that story from a lot of people before. So hearing it from you too, just reiterates kind of that point. So, definitely you got to be willing to do what's best for your child.
Yeah, without question. That overall, that was the story of that day. We and potentially a couple of days after, the nurses were great. We had one particular nurse who and lactation specialist who came in and helped my wife, and Bryce was able to latch. We figured out some tips that we were able to take home. Um, so I mean, I am so thankful, so happy to be in a position I'm in. I know it doesn't work like that for everyone. That isn't lost on me or my wife, but we everything looks absolutely great. And the tongue tie gets fixed on Wednesday, so
There you
that's
go.
that's a that's my only complaint.
Well, my week, Brandon, was nowhere near as exciting as yours, but it was semi-eventful in the world of, fatherhood as far as pregnancy goes. I had a couple things that I did this week that are kind of big. The first one is is something that is called the Tdap shot, which I know you had as well, but it is a shot that basically helps prevent against whooping cough, among other things. But it is obviously the mother gets it, it passes on to the baby, but it's also recommended that the father and any grandparents or anyone that's going to be around the baby a lot get it as well to help prevent from the baby getting whooping cough. So this is a shot that I didn't know much about until actually you mentioned it, and then obviously the midwives mentioned it to me. One, I don't like needles, so I was a little bit freaked out about it, but I was gonna be fine. Like I know I got to do it for my kid. I
He
was like, I
hates
can get
needles
over
for the
that.
record.
I do. They make me pass out. But again, I was over that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get this shot. It's fine. But then Brandon, actually, you got it, and you had some horrible side effects for a long time, and that really kind of freaked me out. So I went to go get this shot, and I went to like a local Walgreens to get it because they're like, "Yep, we have it." And they gave me kind of a runaround with my insurance, which I have insurance through the hospital my wife works at. So now I'm sitting there 45 minutes. It's more in my head. Can't even get it done. Have to go to another place. End up going to a Rite Aid next door. Luckily, they had it there. No issues with the insurance, and I got it done. And knock on wood, this was a few days ago, and I've not really had any side effects other than kind of a sore arm. But um, the main reason I'm bringing that up is because people, if dads, if you're going through this for the first time and maybe you haven't heard about the Tdap shot, I'm sure you will from doctors and stuff. But it's something you might want to look into. And for me, it wasn't that big a deal. And actually, it's pretty rare to have side effects, even though Brandon, you did have them. It sounded like, and I think you even looked it up. It was pretty rare, wasn't it?
It was very rare, but everything I was going through was a side effect of the Tdap shot. We're not medical professionals. In our research, there's a reason that we both got it. If you're listening to this, take from that what you will. The the benefits outweigh the side effects that I went through. For the record, though, it was I was expecting everything that happened to me with that is what they claim happens after like the second COVID shot. COVID shot was pretty good. This one, not so much. And I hate being sick.
Yeah, you were messed up for a little while, and
Yeah,
so
it
I
was
was
a
a
few
little
days.
nervous. I seem to have bad luck with that kind of stuff, but knock on wood, like I said, I've been pretty good.
You're good
Um,
now if it hasn't happened.
I'm
And
hoping
the
so.
odds were forever in your favor anyway.
the other the other thing that happened this week, which is a little bit more exciting than getting a shot, is we had our maternity pictures or pregnancy pictures. I'm not really even sure what the official name is, but basically we
Maternity
did.
pictures.
There we go. So we did pictures. We went out to this park and we had a couple outfits each and took some pictures. And it was kind of nice. I didn't know a lot about that before us getting pregnant, but I know it's really big right now. And I was kind of, I'll be honest, I was kind of like, okay, whatever about it at first, but it was nice. We haven't seen them yet, but I do think that it'll be something that we'll look back upon and be happy that we did. And if nothing else, it's another chance to get good pictures with your wife. So Brandon, you guys did maternity pictures as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was the same mindset. I'm big on commemorating the moment that we're in. And for my wife and I mean, this is the last time that it's just the two of us, other than the dogs. It's just the two of us. And one, you want to be able to look back at kind of the space you were in at the time, and like, that's what the point of a picture is to commemorate a moment. And I think too often we get caught up in the day to day and don't take the time to kind of smell the roses. Man, can you tell that I had a kid? I'm already so like sentimental. Golly.
I was gonna say you're Mr. Sensitive right now. It's probably you're not
Golly.
breaking down and crying on
Dude,
us or
I'm like
something.
getting emotional right now, but I'm joking. But it's that's the point, and it was something my mom was big on. I probably got like 7,000 pictures of me somewhere as a kid. I plan on taking a bunch of pictures of my kid, just because the one thing you hear over and over again is just in a snap of a finger, they're 18 and like running off to college or going off to a career. So take the time, take enjoy the moment. That was part of it. Hey, this is what your mom looked like when you had them, and for us, this is our
Yeah,
last time
it's
taking
for it's
real pictures
for
together.
for them, but it's also for us too. And
Yeah,
and a little dad tip, if you will, too. I think a lot of times if you pay for maternity pictures, you can if you use the same photographer, you can kind of do like a package with your newborn pictures because almost everyone does newborn pictures. So a lot of times it's almost like engagement pictures and then wedding pictures. You can kind of do a package together. Same kind of thing. It makes it more cost effective, and also you kind of get a chance to work with the photographer beforehand if you've never had before actually doing the newborn pics, because those are probably even a step above the maternity pictures as far as importance goes.
Yeah.
Have you guys done yours yet, or scheduled yours, or are they coming
So
up?
it's funny you mentioned that. That's exactly what we did. And our newborn pictures are this Tuesday. So exactly a week after our son was born. Everything I read recommended for newborn specific pictures that you get them done within the first 2 weeks, while the baby still has a lot of those newborn features. To each their own, but that
Yeah,
is
we
something
were
that was important to us.
we were told actually the earlier the better, almost
Yeah,
almost a week or less, because not only what you mentioned, but also the baby becomes more aware at like 2 weeks and plus, and then when they become
yeah,
more aware and they're seeing lights and cameras and stuff, they're harder to get still, and it becomes more difficult for um, the photographer. The photographer we use actually took pictures of a friend's newborn, and they waited till about 2 weeks, and she said that it was not ideal. That and she kind of understood why she tells everyone to kind of do it around a week. So, and I didn't realize they were that early until she said that, and I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of
yeah,
interesting, but I guess it's newborn, right around a week. So that'll
yeah.
be
We're
exciting.
doing
I'm
we're
excited to
doing
see
it at a
those.
week.
That will be exciting. What else this week, Brandon? I know baby's home now. You've got some family to meet the baby. What's life been like the first few days at home with, your child?
So people tell you that to prepare for a lack of sleep. And the cool thing is we had kind of a rough run of it or trial the first time we were at the hospital. Um, but they weren't lying. It's and I would say that we actually have a really good baby who sleeps pretty well. But there is between one, you don't want to leave your wife hanging. Like I just feel weird, and you kind of got to get over this. But like if she's up either breastfeeding or pumping, I feel just like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do if I'm just like laying there asleep in the middle of the night. So I you kind of got to get over that part of it. But our son's, I'm gonna call it his witching hour, is between 1 and 4, um, pretty consistently since he's been born. So with that, it's it's been just like I've been taking a shift at night the last 2 days, and so my wife can sleep. And really, um, that's been the biggest thing. Is life is great. We've had people coming over to meet them, but that lack of sleep has been something that you kind of have to get used to and get used to operating without it. The other quick thing I'll say too is don't be afraid. You mentioned like people coming over. We've had both of our in-law or my parents and then the in-laws over. Her wife was actually here. Her mom, excuse me, was here when we got home. That provided us an opportunity to take a nap, which was great. Um, but don't be afraid to tell people, hey, if my parents wanted to come over and see their grand, they're just as excited as we are, if not more, almost it seems like. But um, if you're tired, like your obligation is to yourself and your baby, and the grandparents will get the time. They absolutely deserve it. But you can tell people to wait a couple hours. Sometimes that's not, we don't think about ourselves all the time. I think it's a little bit okay to be selfish in those moments, just to make sure that you're not looking up like, man, I really don't know how I'm going to get to sleep.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. You definitely need some time for yourself. And like you said, I've heard from a lot of new parents is you can't be afraid to say no. Not just to grandparents, but friends that want to come over early or
Yeah,
kind of distant family. And then also, you got to be careful. Babies are their immune systems are just starting, and you don't want a million people touching them. You don't want them kissing them and stuff like that because RSV and other things. You got to be kind of careful and live in that happy medium of keeping relatives happy, but also the baby safe and also keeping your sanity, if you will. So
yeah,
sometimes when relatives come over, I know it can be helpful, and sometimes I know when relatives come over, it can not be helpful. So you also got to know kind of what you're dealing with there, so that is this going to help my situation or hurt my situation where I'm currently at. So. But that's exciting, and obviously, I saw a picture of your dad holding the baby, and he looked over the moon, so that was a pretty cool picture.
he
Uh,
was.
his first grandkid. So that's awesome, man. That was a super cool picture because sometimes grandparents. I mean, obviously they're not more excited than the parents, but they're about as close as you can get because they do love them some grandchildren.
Both sets have been calling this their baby since before he was born. Like it is unreal to love, and it's so cool to see just like the level of happiness and excitement this gives them. Um, but like you got someone else in the corner. You knew it, but just to see it is great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Brandon, before we finish up here, I'm gonna let you have a chance to win the dad joke battle today, if you will, which is your episode. It's Bryce's episode, so I think that if you're ever gonna win an episode, it's got to be now. So let's hear it.
Jerry, I just have I'm a hip hop fan.
Hmm.
Um, Arguably the greatest rapper alive and of all time is Jay-Z. I wanted to ask you, but don't start. We can have a separate episode about this. What what did Jay-Z call his wife before they got married?
I don't know.
Fiance.
That actually is good. I,
Yeah.
I like it. That one was good. All right, that one. Now I'll give you that one. A little bit more sophisticated and
That's a win.
highbrow than my stick joke, if you will.
That's a win.
I'll give you it. So obviously now our podcast is Brandon and myself, and Bryce is going to be added to the mix. He's an honorary dad joke host, if you will. I don't know if he can talk yet, but we'll let him be part of the crew. But speaking of adding to the show, next week, Brandon, I'm kind of excited. We're going to have a first guest on the show with us, and kind of what we're going to do is I'm going to hit some questions with you and with this gentleman. This person has a little bit more seasoned in the dad area, if you will. And we're going to kind of get some tips and tricks from him and also kind of things that you've noticed already. And since I'm still in the pregnancy phase, I'm going to play mediator and interviewer, and we'll see kind of what tips and tricks you guys have. I'm excited for that.
I am too. And before we end it, I just want to remind people there's a good chance that some photos of Bryce may be added to the Dad Jokes podcast on Instagram. So make sure you follow us on Instagram and check out our Facebook page as well, the Dad Jokes podcast.
Yeah, we might have a poll out there on which stroller is better from our second episode. So you might have to vote on that. And then also, if you guys haven't had a chance, please leave us a review on certain platforms. Like I know Apple, you can leave a review or a rating. We would really appreciate that. All the love and support we can get is greatly appreciated. And already we've received so much. So thank you all for listening. Please recommend us to your friends. And until next time, this has been Dad Jokes.